Welcome back to another episode. And several episodes ago, I talked about couples and money. And I thought maybe it would be interesting to um, drill down a little bit on that and talk especially about new couples that are engaged, looking at becoming partners in whatever form, and maybe get into some specifics that might help you out if you're in a new relationship that appears to be getting serious. We all know that new couples tend to be great talkers. I think of a couple that I introduced to one another, and they called each other for a date and took a drive. And they still did. This was 30 years ago, I think. They still to this day talk about the 9-hour drive. It was 9 hours to nowhere, but it really went somewhere. And I think that's somewhat common when we feel that connection, we feel that chemistry, we feel that energy with another person. That those young stages of love can just be an incredible time of sharing and discovery of one another. And so it's an important time, right? As we explore all of the things that make us who we are, and discovering especially the commonalities that we have with that other person. We discover their life histories and what their philosophies are, and their goals, their hopes, their dreams. So it's a rich, rich time. However, there's one thing that seems to be rather of a challenge, difficult for young couples to talk about, and that is money. And you may think, well, heck, I talk a lot about money with my partner, my girlfriend, boyfriend. So yeah, we got that down. And I would ask you, is the money talk that you have with them about what's happening with government, or what's happening with taxes, or what's happening with inflation, or what's happening with the minimum wage, or corporations that and their profits, or there's a plethora of things to talk about that's about money. But what I'm talking about is having the money talk about our personal money to someone. And as we know, this can be extremely difficult. Revealing to another person how much we earn, how much we're worth, or what our debts are, can give rise to a plethora of really difficult emotions, typically not the least of which is a lot of shame. So there is no wonder that talking about your money to someone else is a societal money script, a generational money script that we learn that you just don't talk about that stuff. We don't have a society that supports talking about your personal money issues. And maybe that's one of the reasons why money issues are identified as one of the main causes of divorce in America. So logically, it would make sense to talk about money when we are are looking certainly at marriage. But it just isn't done as much as certainly in a professional situation I would hope that it would be done. Well, why? We tend to view marriage as primarily a romantic relationship, and it certainly is. But at the same time, marriage, which is a very legal partnership, is a business relationship in just every sense of the word. In fact, it can be easier to get out of a business partnership than a marriage partnership. So talking about marriage or young love or engagement as the forming of a business relationship is usually a pretty significant romantic wet blanket. And just in case that you don't believe marriage is a business relationship, ask the 50% of married people who have suffered a divorce whether it was a business relationship or not. So that is the unfortunate reality of young romance is as romance develops and ages, the reality, the discovery, the awareness that this is a business relationship comes front and center. So having a money talk, I think, is really crucial for young couples who are especially contemplating marriage. It's pretty easy to make a lot of assumptions around this, right? That, well, money's going to be managed and approached in the same way it was done in their family. As a kid, you grew up. If you saw how your parents managed money or didn't manage money, you could assume with parents who managed it all jointly that that's how it's going to work, and you may end up being offended, hurt, or angry if your new partner suggests having separate checking accounts. A partner who grew up with one of their parents taking care of all the family finances may well expect the same. So having the money talk really needs to be pretty specific. It needs to be in depth, and it needs to be probing. And I can already feel some of you just cringing at those words. But everything financially needs to be out in the open and on the table. You are marrying yourself to this person. Remember, sometimes, I don't know, in business or other social situations, you're saying, well, you're not getting married. Okay, well, you're getting married. So basically, the disclosure would be similar to the disclosure involved when you are getting a bank loan. Now, maybe you've never gotten a bank loan, so you don't know what that's about. But if you have ever applied for a mortgage to buy a house, you get what I'm talking about. I mean, it is bring in one receipt, the proof of this, proof of that. Every blessed thing is disclosed to the banker, and they have help because they get a credit report on you, right? So, I think that's a great thing to start with, is each other's credit report. Okay, don't turn me off. Ask those parts of you that are like, oh my God, you're kidding me. No, I am not kidding you. So here's some of the things that you want to discuss. And since I started with credit reports, why are we interested in a credit report? Well, it definitely is pretty tangible evidence, tangible document of how you and your partner view money and your history in money. It will disclose the debts that you've had. It will disclose the spending priorities or patterns, certainly what loans have been received for. I mean, spending as far as what you've spent with checks isn't in a credit report. It will give you a clue of any judgments that are outstanding, or past due bills, or late payments. It will give you a credit score of your partner. So all of this will be revealing, right? Revealing in what it doesn't reveal, and revealing in what it does reveal. So this is a really good place to start. And you may, in entering a conversation like this, you may want some support in entering that conversation. What do you do if your credit report isn't so good and you're feeling a lot of shame in disclosing that? You have parts of you that want to keep that hidden. Pay attention to that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Who wants to activate that shame within us? And yet, it's probably just a matter of time until your to-be partner finds out about this. So much better to handle this right up front before you go down the road and what could have been an ice cube right now turns into an iceberg. So that's a place to start. The credit report's going to show who you've worked for, probably where you're currently employed. This is probably stuff that your partner knows, but there may be some discussions there. You'll need to disclose your income, what your salary is, what are your benefits, what benefits have you chosen, what benefits haven't you chosen. That would get into insurance, right? And if you have selected certain type of benefit package, life insurance, disability, etc., 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 which also will bring up some discussions around that, because it's not uncommon. Some folks just hate insurance, and if you're going to be a stay-at-home partner and you have children, you are probably going to want a significant amount of life insurance to replace the income if your partner dies. Well, if they have a strong belief against that, this is something that maybe you would like to find out now, and it's something that you both could explore. You're going to want to explore just general attitudes toward work. What are their career plans? Do they even have career plans? How long do they anticipate working? Would they anticipate an early retirement? Would they anticipate never retiring? I mean, if you're in your teens or 20s, this is kind of hard, right? You may not even know, but most people have an idea or a philosophy around that. Can it change? Of course it can change. But just finding out what their foundation is. I can think of two clients I've had, and I think I've mentioned this in podcasts, that when I asked them what does retirement mean to them, it meant you died, because the males in their household often died within a year or two of retiring. So these are rich conversations that can really help you understand your partner. Something else that needs to be covered would be cash flow and spending, especially spending. How much does your partner save every month? Or is your partner overspending every month and their credit card debt is building? Do they have investments? Is a portion of their income going to fund a 401k? And if so, how much? This is important to find out. Are they super savers or barely savers, right? Are they saving like some folks are that want to retire, say at 50, where they're saving 50% of their income? This might be good to discover, because it could set up real tension if your partner is a super saver and you are enjoying life and a lot more liberal with spending. This is probably one of the biggest frictions of most couples, is oftentimes one can be a saver and one can be a spender. So these are things to find out right up front. How do they feel about emergency funds? You may have an emergency reserve and your partner doesn't, and may just not see the need and feel an emergency reserve is there to tap into for emergencies that in your vocabulary would not be emergencies. Do they have a budget? Oh, the B word, budget. But do they? And if they do have a budget, that might be great. And if you don't, that could be a source of tension between the partners, right? Because the partner that has a budget just may make an assumption that, of course, we're going to budget. How about individual or separate accounts? This can be a big one, and I already referred to it, that if one partner's growing up watching their parents operate out of a joint account, your money is my money, and your partner has grown up with, let's just say, in a blended family where everybody had their own money. By everybody, I mean each partner. This could be an area of contention. And if you both are going to work, well, who's going to be responsible for what expenses? If one of you earns a lot more than the other, well, how's that going to work? Are you going to split expenses 50-50? If you do keep separate money, are you going to split them on a prorated basis? How is that going to work? And again, probably each of you have assumptions on how this is going to work, but the time to figure it out is best now rather than after you're married and you're setting up the household. Another area that you want to talk about would be a discussion of all the assets. What do you own? Cars, collections, your bank accounts, your investments and how much are in those investments, real estate that you own, businesses, business interests that you might have. Sometimes potential inheritances are important to talk about, especially if your partner is absolutely convinced they're going to get an inheritance, or convinced or absolutely no, which might color their the way they save, and that they may not save. They don't want to save because this inheritance is in their future. Well, that can be fine. The big question is whether you as the partner will be around when that inheritance comes. And I know this is terribly not romantic to talk about what happens if we get a divorce, but that could happen. And so you may say, hey, yeah, great. We don't need to save because we have a guaranteed inheritance coming. And when that comes, may not be a we. So disclosing all the assets is important. And then talking about children is a big deal because children cost a lot of money. How many children would each of you like? Now, that's not so unusual to talk about, right? What are the responsibilities going to be? How are you going to view working around children? Will both of you continue to work? Will one of you quit your job and come home and be with the children? Again, all of this can absolutely change, but it would be good to get out any really strong opinions on this. And another thing to talk about is what is your philosophy going to be for college? Are you going to pay the full tab for your kids, or do you want them to pay a portion of it? Do you need to set up a 529 plan, perhaps at birth? You might think, holy cow, Rick, we don't even have a kid yet. Well, and with full knowledge that 20% of couples can't have children. The first time I heard that, I thought, oh, that has to be high. But at one time, that was spot on. I haven't checked it in several years. But yes, these are things that need to be discussed. In addition to these specifics, other areas to explore would be how money worked in your family growing up. What are your most painful and joyful memories around money? This can all be a very helpful way to have a deeper conversation. And you can do this by using some of the exercises that I use with clients. We call those the money egg, the money atom, and the KMSI-R. We've talked about money scripts and the KMSI in a past podcast. I don't know that I've talked about the money egg and the money atom. That's where you draw your money history and where you draw in 2D your family of origin. You can get some ideas of this if you have the book I co-authored, Facilitating Financial Health, has those exercises. And I'll bet if you Google that, you can find resources to those instructions. And if you need those instructions, drop me an email. I'll get those out to you. Something else to consider is, are you going to have a prenup, a prenuptial agreement? Again, even raising this question can pour a lot of cold water on the relationship. Prenups aren't always necessary, but in some situations, they can really be an important tool to head off potential conflicts over money. I think one of those would be with a blended family. I think it can be important to at least discuss a prenup and preferably discuss that with an attorney. Another area is if there's a lot of financial inequalities with your relationship. How does that feel? How's that going to work? How's it going to work where one person in the coupleship has a lot of money and the other person doesn't? So again, there are just so many things to bring up. And when you're having the money talk, there just isn't anything that's off the table to not talk about. And again, why? because money touches everything we do. Money issues can destroy a relationship. And it's just so important to have that talk before you get married, before you tie the knot. You know, I'll admit to, in the past, having watched some of these programs like, I don't know, what was it, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, you know, there's others out there. Those are probably long gone. But one of the things that's never discussed on a date are attitudes toward money. Now, maybe there's been an episode. I would love to know if it ever was. I'm not I'm not a consistent consumer. But you know, that just isn't part of it. But it's at some point in time. I mean, I don't know, what would it be like to have a money discussion on the third date? Because it might be a whole lot easier to find out, wow, we have some real issues here, and I think it's time to go our own separate ways before we fall in love, become somewhat blinded, start thinking, oh, we can work this out, oh, they will change. There could be a lot of sense in that, but I don't know how hold out any hope that that's going to happen. So I'd be interested in any thoughts you've got, any thoughts on this podcast or others. Feel free to email me at rick@kahler, KAHLER.com. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to spending another episode with you next week. Take care.